We've called Article 1 the agency article, and Article 2 the disclosure article. Let's refer to Article 3 as the cooperation article. The creation of the Code of Ethics was one of the primary forces behind the creation and ongoing evolution of organized multiple listing services, which now number in the hundreds around the country. The concept of an MLS is unique. The underlying premise is that when a realtor participant enters a property into the MLS or some form of computerized database, they are making a unilateral offer of cooperation and compensation to all other realtor participants of the MLS. In other words, I am representing a property owner who wants to sell. If you are working with a prospective buyer who wants to purchase this property, I'm willing to cooperate with you, and I'm willing to compensate you should the seller and buyer come to terms on the sale of the property. This concept of cooperation evolved because realtors recognized that such cooperation greatly benefited the consumer and consequently benefits our profession. Now let's take a closer look at Article 3, the cooperation article.
Realtors shall cooperate with other brokers except when cooperation is not in the client's best interests. The obligation to cooperate does not include the obligation to share commissions, fees, or to otherwise compensate another broker.
While Article 3 makes clear that cooperation does not necessarily include the obligation to share commissions, remember that when a realtor participant enters a listing into an MLS, they are also offering compensation to cooperating agents. The amount of compensation offered is determined by the listing office, and the listing office must advise their seller clients what their compensation policies are, including the amount of compensation to cooperating agents. The very obvious benefit to seller clients is that their property will have much greater exposure to a much larger pool of prospective purchasers. A medium-sized firm of, say, 30 agents may be working with approximately 150 active buyers. If that property is entered into an MLS with over 500 participating offices and over 5,000 participating agents, well, I'll let you do the math. The likelihood of the property selling more quickly and for more money is considerable when exposed to that many more prospective purchasers. And what's the benefit to the purchaser? Well, they have a much greater selection of properties from which to choose. And because the large majority of organized MLSs are Internet-based systems, the search process has never been easier. Realtor.com, the world's largest property search Internet site, provided with property listings from hundreds of realtor MLSs around the country, currently has over 2 million property listings. So how do realtors violate Article 3? That can be summed up with one word: greed. Some realtors do not encourage cooperation because they don't want to share their commissions, even when they've assured their seller clients that they are willing to do so. They are more concerned with retaining the entire commission that their seller has agreed to pay, even if it means getting less money for the seller. In these instances, realtors are not only failing to comply with the mandate of Article 3, they are also putting their own interests above the interests of their client. Sound familiar? Let's look at how Patty and Fred deal with the requirement to cooperate, mandated by Article 3.
Good afternoon. This is Patty Petunia. May I help you? Oh, hello, Fred. What can I do for you today? What's that? My new listing on Myrtle Lane. Not sure I know which one you're talking about. What's the MLS number? It's not an MLS yet. Well then, Fred, why do you think I have a new listing? Because the seller told you. Now, Fred, you have no business talking to one of my clients. I'm assuming you're talking about 229 Myrtle? It just so happens that the seller isn't quite ready to have it shown yet. What's that? The seller told you I've had it listed for a week and have shown it about a dozen times? Well, first off, you shouldn't be talking to my seller. And second, well, that's simply not what happened. The seller was adamant that he didn't want it shown until he'd spruced it up a bit. And if I have shown the property, it's only to some people who the seller knew might have an interest, at his insistence. It was certainly not a dozen times. When am I entering it in the MLS? When the seller asks me to, probably after this weekend. Look, I'm just following the seller's instructions. No, you are not to call my seller again. That would be interference, and you know it. Okay, I'll make an appointment for Monday morning. Oh, Fred, I'm surprised you think so little of me as to suspect that I'm trying to sell this property in-house. Why, think of all the cooperative transactions we've had. Good luck with your showing on Monday. Let me know if you get an offer. Have a good weekend. Rats! How did Fred find out about the Myrtle Lane listing? He's such a snoop. I swear he must have a private detective following me around. I was so sure I'd be able to get this house sold quickly. Well, I still have the weekend, and I still have those buyers who expressed an interest last night. I'll call them. They only have a day or two to decide, and then they'll be competing with a lot more buyers on this property.
It sounds like Patty is more interested in keeping the entire commission for herself than cooperating with Fred, doesn't it? If Fred were to find out what Patty was doing, I think an ethics complaint alleging a violation of Article 3 could definitely be in Patty's future. Let's rewind the tape and give Patty one more try.
Yes, Mr. Jones, I'm so pleased that you've selected me to represent you in the sale of your home. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. I think you've priced it very aggressively, and you'll find that you'll have immediate activity. There are plenty of buyers looking just for your type of property. With my marketing plan combined with the exposure you'll have from the multiple listing service, I'm confident we'll have viable offers for your consideration very quickly. Now, I'd like to list your property on the multiple listing service as soon as possible. The more brokers we expose your property to, the more potential buyers we'll have. Do you think you'll be ready to show your property by this weekend? Wonderful. I'll be over first thing tomorrow morning with the listing agreement. See you then.
Wow. Sounds like Patty has taken a crash course in Article 3. She obviously understands that cooperating with fellow realtors will benefit her seller client, and she doesn't put up unnecessary roadblocks to discourage cooperation. Before we move on, let's take a look at some of the standards of practice associated with Article 3. Standard of Practice 3-2 of the Code of Ethics specifies that realtors shall advise cooperating agents of any change of compensation prior to the time that the agent produces an offer to purchase or lease the property. This means that if Fred were to list the property and offer a certain amount of compensation in the MLS to cooperating agents, and Patty makes an offer on the property, Fred can't subsequently reduce that amount of compensation because he's not overly fond of Patty. Standard of Practice 3-6 specifies that realtors shall disclose the existence of accepted offers, including offers with unresolved contingencies, to any brokers seeking cooperation. This standard can create some challenges to realtors. Let's take a look at how Patty handles this dilemma.